Nutrition for Food Service and Culinary Professionals. Chapter 10. Today we're going to be talking about balanced menus. In everyday conversation, most people use the word healthy when describing certain foods and menus. In our textbook, we refer to healthy as balanced. So you'll hear me use those words interchangeably throughout the chapter. Balance on a menu is an essential component of food selection for your guests, many of whom dine out many times a day and also possess a vast knowledge of health and wellness. That's why it's so important to have an understanding of balanced meals and menus to allow for enjoyable guest experience and also increase sales. Customers who eat out on a regular basis are demanding healthier options that are satisfying in taste, value-driven in price, and interesting in presentation. The educated consumer, with their keen awareness of local, organic, chemical-free, sustainable, heritage, and heirloom foods, have created quite an additional responsibility for the culinary professional to have a deeper knowledge of where and how the food you're providing is grown, who's involved in growing it, and how it's imported. Lots of things to consider in developing your menus. Today's objectives are to learn how to develop and evaluate a balanced menu, how to plan tasty, balanced menu items, based on all the different appropriate ingredients and cooking methods. And then we'll talk a little bit about presentation. So, the inspiration of balanced cooking begins with the fundamentals of proper techniques and cooking methodology. Once that foundation is built, your culinary creativity can take over without sacrificing flavor and the overall guest experience. To create balanced menus, you must have a greater understanding of the food groups, portion control, calories, types of fats, simple and complex carbohydrates, sugar, and sodium levels. We've talked about all of these, but that's really, we built the foundation and now we're applying a lot of that information. The balanced selections that you offer should complement the style and also the culinary genre of your menu. Like I mentioned in previous chapters, we have an opportunity to be instrumental in promoting balanced eating styles, and that's a big responsibility. No longer should bad and unhealthy and good and healthy be on opposite ends of the menu. Healthy alternatives should be intermingled with the regular selections on the menu. They shouldn't be reserved for those who are looking to lose weight or dealing with a chronic disease. They should be choices you make depending on what you ate yesterday, along with what you're eating today, so that you balance and moderate your calorie intake and nutrient intake for the week. So the idea is, not to be overly concerned about keeping everything at such a tight control, because choices need to be made depending on what you're eating, with the rest of your meal. So in other words, always be looking at the big picture. That would be the message that I would give a client that I worked with for nutrition, and that should be your concern dealing with the menu. You don't have to clean it all up. There can be some, choices that are richer and higher in calories, but they can be balanced out by providing other options. And that's really the main thing here, is providing options. The three important components of any dish are presentation, taste, and value. So, what does balance mean? What do we mean by balance? Webster's dictionary describes it as equal distribution, steadiness, or pleasing integration of elements. You may want to define a balanced meal as one that includes the right amount of vegetables and fruit and whole grains and lean protein, dairy, and healthy oils. Another way to look at a balanced meal is to examine the nutrients and the value it contains, such as 800 calories or less a meal, 20 to 35% of your calories from fat, emphasizing monounsaturated oils and polyunsaturated fats instead of saturated, keeping the saturated fat content less than 10 grams, avoiding trans fats, having 10 grams or more of fiber, 4 teaspoons or less of added sugar, possibly 30 grams of protein, and a reduction in sodium by 800 milligrams or less. So again, you can define your balance in different ways. Looking at food groups and making sure you have 2 to 3 food groups in a meal, or looking more specifically like this slide suggests. And again, this doesn't mean that each menu item should follow these guidelines. For example, it's possibly to include like a ribeye steak, which would have more than 35 calories from fat in the meal, as long as the other dishes in the meal are lower or non-fat, such as vegetables, fruits, and whole grains. So the percentage of total calories from fat in the entire goal. So therefore, the percentage of total calories from fat in the entire meal meets the goal. So again, going back to that ribeye steak, which is very high in fat, instead of having something like a au gratin potato, which would be adding even more fat to that meal, maybe have a baked sweet potato, and emphasize, the complex carbohydrate and the fiber and the nutrients you're getting from that, as opposed to just adding more fat with the Gruyere cheese from the au gratin potatoes. That way, you're looking at the percentage of total calories from fat in the entire meal and not worrying about just that one item. So there's a lot of different ways to, focus on healthy, unhealthy, and obviously, it's important to establish what your goal is from the onset of developing a menu. For smart menu engineering that includes balanced menu items, you want to think about these things. First, you can possibly use existing items on your menu, like fresh salads, fresh roasted or grilled vegetables, well-trimmed or lean protein items, grain and legumes, etc. With some revamping and updating, you can meet the needs of your customer base with a variety of foods with a good nutritional profile without much effort. Or you can modify existing items to make them more nutritious. For example, instead of fried fish with French fries and hush puppies, maybe try a pan-seared fish option and serve it with crisp marinated slaw and a fresh salsa with the hush puppies. So modifying ingredients and cooking methods can create a viable option for updating your menu. So you're using existing items instead of changing it all up. Or you can adjust an existing menu selection, like offer a smaller portion of protein accompanied by more vegetables, salads, grains, or beans. The value perception for your customer is achieved by a substantial portion attaining proper food and labor cost parameters. Or you can create a totally new selection, and that's drawing from your culinary skills to craft a whole new menu selection, or use resources to collect recipes that fit into a more balanced criteria. So that menu, can go so many different ways. Using existing items, modifying those, adjusting an existing selection, or creating a whole new selection. It's your choice. So how to evaluate the new balanced menu selections? There's a lot of different considerations that you have to make when you are using new items. We've honed this point in so many times. Number one is taste. Does the menu item have a dynamic flavor profile? Remember, taste is the key to customer success and acceptance. It won't sell if it's missing that satisfying, delicious flavor, period. Execution by cooking staff. Can your cooking staff actually execute this item efficiently and consistently? Do you have the right equipment to support the application? Do you have the training procedures, guidelines, and support for the culinary and front of house staff? That's a key thing. You may want to do something, but if it's not easy to execute, it may not be efficient for the kitchen. Does it complement the rest of your menu? Does it have menu continuity? Does the menu item complement the rest of the menu selections? What about customer preferences? Does your menu item meet the food style, choices, and preferences of your guests? So you may want to do sustainable, organic, locally prepared foods, but if you're living in an area where people can't afford the cost that it's incurred in providing those, that may not be the best idea. You have to get to know your customers. They'll enjoy giving you their opinions. Another key thing, obviously, is price point. Is it in line with the customer value? Preparation. How much prep is needed for each item? What about color? Is there balance in color that complements the overall components? The good thing is that any of your fresh whole food is naturally visually appealing, so that's a good thing. Texture. Are there varieties of textures? Crispy, crunchy, smooth, tender, chewy, creamy, and hard. So you want a variety. Always think about variety. And then, of course, your flavor profile. Do the flavors complement one another? You have to think about, is your menu global, regional, classical, local, or original? You may not want to combine all of those. Are there sensible combinations? Are the food combinations innovative, sensible, easily recognized, and acceptable? Well, what about the presentation? Are there a range of shapes and sizes, heights, and flow, adding an interesting visual appeal? Is it interesting? Are the cooking techniques varied and interesting? And is your concept sustainable? Is your concept focused on community responsibility, locally sourced, sustainable, using organic ingredients? These are just a few of the many things to consider when deciding on menu items. Once you decide that, it's extremely important to communicate information about your menu. What compels a diner to order a certain item on the menu? Personal food preferences, health concerns, economics, peer pressure, and taste generally dictate what people order at a restaurant. How a menu item is described gives diners the information they need to make selections. Menu descriptions can also provide clues about how healthy or balanced an item is. So ask yourself these questions. What is it? How is it prepared? What are the food's special qualities? What are the ingredients? What is the serving size? So let's start with what is it? Healthful key ingredients, examples, fish, scallops, greens, whole grains. Those are the guest's first indication that the menu item may be a healthier choice. How is it prepared? Indicating how the food is prepared can be very useful. Poaching, steaming, grilling, roasting, and infusing are generally low-fat, high-flavor cooking methods. Words like crispy, crunchy, creamy, cheesy generally suggest high-fat. Unless, of course, it's a cream soup thickened with pureed root vegetables, right? What are the food's special qualities? Featuring the location that some of the ingredients were sourced can indicate healthfulness, or that the items are green, such as the use of words like free range or organic, grass-fed, or locally grown. What are the ingredients? Words like creamed, buttered, glazed can be dead giveaways that the items are full of fat. On the other hand, fruit coulis, vegetable puree, whole grains are obviously promoting healthful choices. What is the serving size? Words like generous heaping obviously suggest supersized portions, but the trend nowadays is more small plates, half portions, and bite sized desserts, which will allow guests to enjoy a variety of food without excess. Again, lots of considerations on deciding how to make a more balanced menu. The next group of slides refers to various parts of the menu and meal. The book has very detailed tips on ramping up these food choices. Be sure to spend more time reviewing those, especially if you're new to the business. Appetizers are an important part of any menu, usually where guests get their first impression of a restaurant. These have much evolved over the years into mini type entrees or small plates with creative presentations and refined preparations. Many remain simple but with new twists, modernizing old classics. For appetizers, you want to moderate the use of ingredients that are high in fat and saturated fat. Garnishes are important. Dehydrated vegetable chips are a great way to add color, texture, and also dimension. Creative sauces, salsas, dressings, and relishes are really perfect accompaniments instead of high fat aioli, etc. Be in tune with the needs of your guests and attract guests with enticing verbiage on the menu. This is just an example of different wrappers: wonton skins, egg roll wrappers, rice paper wrappers, and then, of course, fresh fillings like julienne vegetables, skim milk ricotta, smoked chicken. Very unusual and different. Some of your appetizer ideas might be scalloped shrimp rolls and rice paper, a way to make a visual appealing grilled vegetable like a Napoleon with maybe goat cheese in between. Doing quesadillas with a very nice tomatilla salsa, including veggies with your hummus, like for instance a roasted red bell pepper blended with your hummus. So there's a lot of things that you can do that makes it a little bit different and just kind of steps it up a notch. Soups make up some of the most nutritious meals and can be used as either an appetizer or also given first billing as an entree. Soups can spotlight healthier, balanced vegetables, beans, lentils, split peas, and whole grains. And some of these ingredients can even act as a thickener. Rice is an excellent thickener. So there's just a lot of things that you can do with soup to really use that as a balanced item on your menu. Here's an example of your black bean soup. And if you want to thicken it, you can take some of the black beans out and thicken it with an immersion blender and add them back in, and then topping them with just some monounsaturated avocado and some extra tomatoes really gives it that nutrition by addition boost. Cream soups like cream of broccoli can use like fresh broccoli, onions and garlic, shallots and leeks, and vegetable stocks, as opposed to using cream or roux. And you can always take your immersion blender and blend that off. You can reduce it, you can add potatoes, and puree to get that proper consistency. So there's a lot of things you can do. You can also drizzle with non-fat yogurt and also some steamed broccoli florets to give it some texture, some visual appeal, and also bump up the nutritional value of calcium and vitamin D. If you're using concentrated bases, pick those as beef, chicken, or fish extract as the first ingredient, not salt. And that way you can, generally get more flavor without all the additional sodium. Presentation is so important. You can strain soups and, remove some of the fibrous strands from some of the vegetables. You can add in ingredients to pop flavor like lime juice to finish off a bean soup. add some fresh herbs on top, garnish with an ingredient that accompanies the soup whenever possible. You can do like a tomato soup and have a mini grilled cheese sandwich crouton on top. A lot of fun things. To formulate a simple salad, you can use a lot of different fresh lettuces. Components of a salad go way beyond raw and simple raw ingredients. There's so many types of greens nowadays that are readily available, but you can also use other vegetables and different dressing combinations to create either simple or complex main dish salads. They can add healthy choices, variety, and creativity to your menu. The key is to make sure your ingredients blend well and complement with each other for a sensational menu item. So, like I mentioned, you can use a lot of different lettuces, sprouts, microgreens, and then, for your dressings, use high quality and different vinaigrettes and oils. This particular salad changes up, the variety of lettuce by using rocket frisee greens with oranges, walnuts, and little slivers of onion. I think there's also some shaved fennel in there. But these give your salad such variety and also up the nutritional value. There are different kinds of salads. Some are more complicated, involving different ingredients, such as the variety of proteins, vegetables, fruits, grains, and they're tossed with, flavorful dressings. There's three different kinds of complex salads. There's the bound protein salads, such as a fresh tuna, or a chicken salad. And then there's complete entree salads that are either with a meat, starch, or vegetable, or maybe even a vegetarian style with legumes, grains, vegetables, and possibly even dairy. And then, of course, you have your fruit salads, which are usually fresh fruit or dried fruit with their juices, sometimes fresh herbs. Sometimes, a sweetened dressing is included, like a poppy seed dressing. There's different kinds of salads to be included on your menu. Now, when it comes to salad dressings, they can be used in much more than just salads. So you can use them in entrees and appetizers, relishes, vegetables, and even use them as marinades or even a drizzle, to add a pop of flavor. They can be basic, using quality oils and vinegars, or they can be creamy, using processed tofu to produce that creamy sensation, or pureed dressings using hummus as an ingredient, or maybe even just a reduction type dressing, which includes the reduced intense flavors of juices or vinegars or whatever. So, let's explore that a little bit more. For instance, your basic herb dressing, herb vinaigrette, is 1 part oil and 1 part vinegar, and 2 parts thickened chicken or vegetable stock. Maybe your creamy dressings are used with silken tofu, or non-fat or low-fat yogurt, or sour cream or ricotta. Pureed fruits add a creamy texture and also can be used as an emulsifier. So, again, just be creative with what you have. Pureed dressings, such as potato vinaigrette, hummus, and tomato tarragon coulis, some of these work well as a thick dressing or even a dip or a sandwich spread. And then, of course, your reduction dressings involve reducing fruit juices, such as in an orange vinaigrette. So you can take, 2 cups of fruit juice and reduce it down to a quarter or a half cup and use that as part of your liquid for the vinaigrette. Again, not only are you adding nutrients, but you're reducing the amount of fat used in the dressing. If you're wanting to emulsify a dressing, you can add things like Dijon mustard, maybe a touch of honey in place of sugar. All those can be really delicious and attractive, and also change up the flavor of a basic salad. This is an example of a grain salad. Actually, it's more of a vegetable salad, really, but the grain you can see in here is probably either buckwheat or maybe wheat berry, and it's displayed with roasted beets, roasted or grilled asparagus. And what I love about this is it really is making use of a lot of your veggies. It's adding protein, different kinds of beans. I see kidney beans and black beans for your protein source. So it's really a complete meal. And look how much food is there. It's a very vegetables provide a lot of filler, and at the same time, not a lot of calories. How about entrees? Developing balanced entrees will rely on your entire knowledge of products, cooking techniques and methods, and also nutritional requirements. There's so many resources to gain competency in this area. There's hands-on labs and classes, online resources, and books to help you create delicious entrees, ranging from traditional, vegan, vegetarian, allergen sensitive, diabetic, or any other eating style you may come across. Always keep in mind that your friendly dietitian will always be there to help and make recommendations. This slide just gives us an example of what an adequate portion is. 5 ounces raw would be adequate. You're going to lose moisture in cooking, and that ends up being a 3.5 to 4 ounce portion. When you're choosing foods to use as entrees, it's really best to choose leaner cuts of meat if you're trying to go for the healthier or balanced option. Fish and shellfish always fall into that category, and so does poultry as long as the skin is not eaten or it's removed after cooking.